obviously you've been talking here today all day about some assumptions that you have when you move forward on regulation, both on the energy side and on the environmental emissions side. But it was interesting, one of the conversation we were having over dinner, and I want to start with this because I thought it was quite interesting. Here we are talking about transparency, the Transparency Awards. And you were saying that when you sell electricity, transparency is key because you don't know exactly what you're selling. If you were to buy wheat or gold or coal, you can feel it, you can weigh it, you can judge it, so the interlocutors know what they're selling. And yet, with electricity, what is it? What makes it up? How do you sell it? And one of our colleagues at the table said, well, isn't that an argument for a natural monopoly that is run by the government and regulated by the government? And I thought your answer was quite interesting. So let me put that to you. All this talk about transparency so we have an efficient market, wouldn't it be better just to have a natural monopoly owned by the government and regulated the market by the government so we wouldn't have to deal with all these issues? I pose that to you.
I like the question, but you cannot believe or know so much. There is a Nobel laureate I really adore, that's the most intelligent man I've ever saw in my life. He did die 3 months ago at the age of 102, just publishing his last book entitled How China Became Capitalist. And the guy is known everywhere, Ronald Coase. That's incredible. What Ronald Coase says, he's saying, you have market deficiencies. Okay. But what do you do to cure the market failures, the market deficiencies? You ask the state to intervene. But what the state can deliver? What don't you try to fix the market? It has been so stupid that this guy didn't get a job at the Faculty of Economics at Chicago. It has been refused. He did get it where? At the law faculty. Because have you seen from Mark the degree at which lawyers think is really basics. That's true, huh? Not the fact that lawyers are thinking that, but the fact that they did accept Ronald Coase because they do not care about the sophistication of the mind. But this mind was extremely sophisticated. Coase was saying, okay, the market is failing because you are unable to organize the exchange. If you find a way to make it exchangeable, I do not know if it is plain English, but in French it sounds well. If you find a way to make it exchangeable, your market will work. And this we know from Daniel Herman. Daniel Herman is pretty well known to have studied SO2 market, so a market for pollution. And that's why Denis did jump to CO2 market, another type of market for pollution. If you can encapsulate pollution in a certificate, in something credible, we have a market for pollution. And I remember to all people being more than 50 years old, we are only 2 or 3 at this table. We did see the same with waves for radio and TV. For years or decades, we did believe that radio and TV can only be monopolies because waves through which we send signals can only be monopoly. But as soon as we did define properly what is a wave of emission and reception, we have been able to have radio competition and TV competition. And the same goes for electricity. As soon as you have a good IT system, you can identify who is injecting, who is withdrawing, at what time, does it match? If not, who is responsible for what? That's what we call electricity market. But in fact, it's electricity computer IT. That's the end of the thing. So It's not the fact that it is complex, it is not. I'm sure that my computer is more complex than the electricity market. It is the fact that you need many rules. The outcome of the market is, I will be frank, 60%, 80% given by the rules. If you change the rules, you change the outcome. But it is not a crime, because any way to exchange, you need rules. That's life.
Which brings me slightly to my next question, because there is another market that was very highly touted here in Brussels, which is the CO2 emissions trading market. And the story of that in Brussels has been, frankly, one of failure. When it was set up, it was at the vanguard, and now prices are so low, it has no incentive on any industry to try to be energy efficient. And frankly, the rest of the world, which was rumored to eventually sign up to this, is now not. And it does get to this issue of setting rules, because the European Parliament is debating whether to change the rules, and obviously industry is quite upset about that. But I guess your argument would be, if the rules are improper, you do have to change the rules. Are you advocating changing the rules to make this market more efficient?
Peter, I hope that this evening is not recorded. If it is, I hope you will destroy the master and that your kids will never see it. It is known since centuries. It has been called the paradox of the diamond and the water. Why the diamond is so expensive when we are in a wealthy city with abundant water and the water is given for free? But why in the desert diamond has no value? Why the water is more expensive than the... Why is this? But this is not rocket science. Huh? What is the scarcity of the offer? What is the level of the demand? What is the willingness to pay from the demand, etc. That's basic economics, Alfred Marshall, 1880. The same goes with pollution rights. You have pollution rights. How much do you have? This side, or this side? You can see immediately the problem. This right is defined by a public authority, which is correct. Then the public authority is saying, oh, we should need this amount. Then we have this very big economic crisis. It is economic and financial. So finally, we need this amount. Okay, but we did issue this amount. We did use this amount. What is the price of a certificate? Nothing. Even to clean my shoes, I can use Kleenex. I do not need this certificate. That's the story we have. That's the story we have. And on this, I'm okay with Madame Hedegaard, the commissioner, who says, I'm sorry, guys, but the ETS did work, because today, polluting is for free. I have a proof, apart from Miss Hedegaard, why polluting is for free. Look at Germany. Half of German electricity, Annika, do not listen to me, Kai, do not listen to me, and certainly other people. How do they generate electricity? Not with renewable. Renewable is only 20 billion euro subsidy, so it's not enough to generate electricity. They generate with coal. So the most polluting fuel we have. Why? Because polluting is for free, that's the proof. So for me, it's not paradoxical at all. The ETS market works, but it does not deliver vis-à-vis the expectation we have regarding pollution, because it delivers more pollution instead of less.
Believe it or not, I did take economics in university, so I did get the concept of supply and demand. But I guess the question was more, the point you were making is that...
It is for equity.
I am the average height of the American man. You're just overly tall. The point, though, I was trying to get at was not necessarily whether a market is a good thing or bad thing or how they function, but whether the current market as set up is effective because, as you say, you can pollute for free. Should not, I guess let me phrase the question slightly differently. Should government authorities, the European Parliament, the European Commission, now dip back into the market to either take back credits or is that something that changing the rules of the game in the middle of the game? No, you sit down. I'll get another chair.
Unfortunately, I will be frank, I do not know. I will tell you the way I think. When I want to know, I ask Denis Ellerman. That's a bit stupid, but Denis, in my mind, is the most wonderful expert I know on SO2, CO2, or pollution rights and market. So I ask Denis. But I'm not sure that we have to fix, refix, re-refix, defix, and refix the CO2 market. Maybe we can touch it once, but if we touch it every year, every 2 years, because we made a mistake when forecasting the amount we need and the amount we get, we will end up with what? Let's be frank. We will end up with the same thing like renewable feed-in tariff. We will end up with the same thing like, how do we call it years ago? Stranded cost amount. I am stranded. Okay, you're stranded, but how much money do you want? We will end it with, let's say, too politicized amount of this or amount of that. If you think, you, Peter, and you there, that we are able to fix it once because the financial crisis is so big with so deep consequences that it is correct to fix it once, okay, let's fix it once. If it is every year, okay, will be voted at the parliament, and then it will be vetoed by the council, and then it remembers me something Jean Arnold knows very well, the way infrastructure projects were ranked and subsidized in the old, what was the name? The 10E. What is the meaning of 10E? Trans-European Network of Energy.
All right, different topic. We have, around the time of Copenhagen, so 3-4 years ago, Europe, again, saw itself as the vanguard on energy policy, particularly because of its climate change policy. It went to Copenhagen thinking that it would be able to win over support from the rest of the developing world, and as we all know now, the rest of the developing world did not sign up. Here we are now, 4 years later, and after or during the financial crisis, Europe's energy policy seems to have changed, and we talked a bit about this over dinner. The idea that European energy and climate policy is focused on 2020 seems to have been put out the door, forgotten about, no one talks about it anymore. We are now in an age where competitiveness and economic growth seem to be the most important thing in Europe. And this gets to other issues that are happening globally, shale gas revolution in the United States, where heavy manufacturing is now able to particularly energy-intensive manufacturing is able to produce at lower cost. Has something fundamental changed here in Europe in terms of the way it approaches energy policy, in that emissions and climate change no longer is the top priority and is almost forgotten because of the need to have a competitive industry globally?
I will lose several friends tonight and a few enemies also, but it won't compensate. I fully agree with Fernand, my compatriot. I made an interview of Fernand 1 hour ago, 2 hours ago, and Fernand did say something fantastic. Fernand did say, Chancellor Merkel, 7 years ago at the Berlin Council, was totally correct to push European Union to get targets, because at this time we did think, how do we call them, polluting fuel, but we do not say polluting fuel, fossil fuels. Fossil fuels will be scarce and scarcer, or more scarce. Yeah. So expensive and more expensive. Maybe they will reach $200 a barrel. So it's really incredible the price we are going to pay it, and we know that it is polluting. Renewable, the price or the cost of renewable today is really insane. $400, $500 a megawatt of solar. Okay, but it will go down. It will go down. If solar goes down 2 times, 250. If oil reaches 200, there is 50 of difference. But maybe the 50 is enough to compensate for the pollution consequences. So let's go for it. On the top, there is a very old idea in economics, which is when you have something imported which is sold to you well above the average cost because the marginal cost is extremely high, it's not totally stupid to think I will substitute something of my own. Because why I should give that rent to the producers? They sell at the marginal cost, but they have increasing marginal cost. Why should I give them this rent? Anyway, they will spoil the rent. So I will spoil the rent myself. I will produce a non-competitive good, but this non-competitive good, on average, will have exactly the price of import, and we will get no rent, but at least we will get job. It was not stupid. It was what it was. But today, we are less convinced of it because instead of having not enough fossil fuel, we do think, gosh, we have a lot. We have even Cyprus and Israel. Maybe they will be an enormous gas exporter, but we have gas everywhere. Every week you open your Financial Times. I do not open, I read it on iPad. But you open your Financial Times, you see there is gas here, there is gas everywhere, except in my pocket. So, and regarding the price of renewable, it is true that the price is down, but if you compare to the price of shale gas, you're scratching your head because the price of a ton of CO2 avoided through renewable subsidy and the price of CO2 avoided through shale gas are not converging. So we are scratching our heads, and we are scratching our heads, and we are scratching our heads. And we have heard 3 weeks ago that a senior, it's not manager, so a senior position at the European Commission did say in not a private but a non-open meeting, maybe we have now to tackle competitiveness much more because what we can achieve by ourselves inside the European Union regarding the depollution of the world is too low. So is it a smart strategy to commit suicide? It's not obvious, but it's totally separate from this. It's coming from Jean Tirole, a French, but this guy is professor at MIT, like Ignacio. And Jean Tirole is saying, it's a bit counterintuitive, but the most you reduce your pollution, the less bargaining rights you have. So if you totally suppress, if I push it, it's totally intuitive. If I totally suppress my pollution, I'm not polluting anymore. Why should I have bargaining rights in the depollution party? So we are there. I cannot tell what is right, what is not, but I know that we are there.
Let me just challenge you on one point, and then we'll have one final question, and then I'll let you go. You cited Chancellor Merkel. Arguably the most economically viable, non-emission CO2 emissions energy source is nuclear. And yet at a time when Europe is looking to diversify its energy supplies and push for non-emissions energy supplies, Chancellor Merkel has decided to shut down every nuclear plant in Germany. Your country and my country, at least in my country before shale gas, were exploring new nuclear as potentially a cleaner energy source. Now, it sounds a little bit counterintuitive given the byproducts that nuclear puts out. But was that a mistake? Was that a mistake for an EU that is looking for cost-effective, non-emissions energy sources?
Peter, you are good as a journalist, but very nasty with me, because I will again lose friends and get back one or two enemies, but not enough to compensate. There is two or three very different aspects of it. First, what do we know about nuclear costs? If we are French, Fernand is and some others, if we are French, we know today that we do not know. If we look at regulated tariffs, Patricia is French too. If we look at regulated tariffs, roughly Inspection des Finances, etc., considers that existing French nuclear, certainly less than 40 euro a megawatt hour. It has been said by Inspection des Finances 6 years ago, when I was still living in France, 35, 36, 37. Okay. If it is so, of course, that's a very cheap way of depolluting. Unfortunately for us, there is two banks for the channel, or to the channel, depending the kind of English you speak. There is two banks over the channel, the French and the English. What is the English government saying about the nuclear costs today? 110 euro a megawatt hour. In Italy, we say, mamma mia. If it is the cost of nuclear 110, it's not that cheap to depollute CO2. Because nuclear has another dimension, which is not CO2, I fully agree. This dimension has been studied by one of my friends. You cannot believe the name, François Lévesque, because François Lévesque is really Francis the Bishop. And François Lévesque did show something which is extremely easy to understand, but by the way, nuclear has financial costs. Okay, we know, because that's money you use to get nuclear, but it has also other costs, like option costs, value costs, opportunity costs, risks. What's the size of the risk with Fukushima? We've seen a risk. It has been realized. So this risk, now you can calculate. I cannot remember the amount, but François did calculate something like 20, 30 euro a megawatt hour for each megawatt hour of nuclear output since the beginning of nuclear output in Japan. So it's an enormous amount of money. And a part of the money, you have also something like, let's say, democracy. And this, in France, we are not entirely good with democracy, but in England, they put it roughly like this. Let's assume that in a country you have a strong minority. And for this minority, really, this thing is unacceptable. How big should be the majority to make it swallowed by the minority? How big should it be? 2/3, 3/4, 80%, 90%? That's a big issue in democratic societies. If you combine the two aspects, nuclear is not shining. Even if we keep it, even if it is tolerable, even if, by the way, the English nuclear will be with French dress, but Chinese bombs.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Jean-Michel Glachant. I will now turn you back over to our host for the big event.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.